brain power. Thank you, Maya.
And I don't know, is this is working?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Tom Brennan,
Okay, I'm gonna try.
Who
I'm
is?
gonna try. Presenting after Tom's tall ass. But I will do my best. So thank you so much for having me back. I guess this is my third time presenting at this conference, and it's just very exciting because as a dietitian, seafood is just very, very near and dear to my heart. I started out my undergraduate dietetics career thinking, I've got to become vegetarian. That is definitely got to be 100% the healthiest way to eat. And then class after class after class, I kept learning about the health benefits of seafood, and I just couldn't come up with a health-based reason to avoid this food. And so sort of the rest is history. I heard Linda speak on a podcast and reached out to her randomly and said, how can I help? And so I've been involved with the Scientific Advisory Committee and S&P ever since. And, you know, I'm just so excited to be talking about this with you all today. And before I dive in, I'll tell you a little bit about my background. So I've worked at FDA and USDA and throughout academia. And now I find myself at a wonderful company called FoodMinds, where I get to really bring all of my nutrition, communication, and food policy experience together for our clients, where we tell stories about food. So we believe that food stories shape health and shape culture. And our mission is to change how the world thinks about food, nutrition, and health. And we don't just tell stories, we kind of make things happen. And so this slide shows many of the things that we do at FoodMinds to bring change to the food environment and to influence what clinicians, policymakers, consumers are thinking and believing about food, nutrition, and health, all based on strong scientific evidence. So to dive into our topic for today, my talk is grounded in a landmark commentary that was published in the journal Neurotoxicology this year, where 25 leading scientists from around the world came together to share one message loud and clear. Our current fish consumption advice is costing kids their full potential. And I have to say, as someone who worked at FDA, was part of the education and outreach branch where we produced the fish advice jointly with EPA, I know that this commentary is really quite true. So we're focusing our advice a lot on fear instead of on evidence. And by doing this, we're depriving children of essential nutrients in a critical window for their brain development and their eye development. So let's talk a little bit about how did we get here? Where did this fear-based advice come out of? So fish advisories didn't come out of nowhere. They were born out of real tragedies. There was a mercury poisoning event in the 1950s in Minamata, Japan, due to an industrial poisoning event where exposure reached hundreds of times greater levels than what you would see in ocean species with devastating consequences. And there were also studies in the 90s of moms who were eating pilot whale during their pregnancy in the Faroe Islands. So this is the problem. These stories became the foundation for the fish advice that we're giving to this day. And it's driving fear, even though these stories don't apply to fish even. So we're letting ghosts of the past deprive our future generations of reaching their potential. So let's talk about what the science actually does say. So Jean Golding, who is the founder of the Avalon Longitudinal Study of Parents and Children, and Professor Emeritus at University of Bristol, says the evidence has become convincing. Advisories warning about methylmercury have likely resulted in children failing to reach their full neurodevelopmental potential. So what the science actually says in over 30 studies, looking at over 60 outcomes in 300,000 mother-child pairs, shows consistent cognitive gains in children whose mothers eat fish during pregnancy with little evidence of harm due to methylmercury. And as I learned over and over and over in undergrad, fish provides this really unique package of nutrients, as Dr. Brenna mentioned. When you think about the omega-3s, iodine, choline, selenium, and others, that are critical to children's brain and eye development. So we all know when you're pregnant, you take your prenatal vitamin, right? But knowing that you need your fish vitamin as well, and that is 8 to 12 ounces of fish per week. Yet and still, the average mom in the US is consuming 1.8 ounces a week. So this is not just falling short, this is a huge missed opportunity that translates into measurable IQ points that are being lost at population scale. So thinking about our current messaging, if you all are familiar with the FDA, EPA fish advice, it really focuses on best choices, good choices, and choices to avoid, and is really framed around mercury and kind of makes fish seem a little bit scary. And you might look at that and just say, you know what? I'm gonna avoid all these choices because this looks really frightening. So our current advisories are characterizing fish by mercury level and not by omega-3 content, which is really the important point that pregnant people need to hear. We also have sort of baked in messaging that there's other foods that could substitute for fish, and there's no scientific evidence of that actually being true. So I am challenging the public health community to develop messaging that highlights the absence of harm, the positive effects on children's brain development, as well as reduction of preterm birth. And that is clear and simple, that says, eat 8 to 12 ounces of omega-3 rich fish for children's brain development and reduction of preterm birth. That's really what the advice should center around. So we know that advice that's based on precaution just absolutely does not match the science. So what are the consequences of inaction, of just sort of leaving things as they are? So what we're seeing is that a quarter of women eat little or no seafood at all during pregnancy. And we know that this is the critical window for fetal brain development is during that prenatal period. And then I'm gonna have a higher number than even Tom Brenna had with this 3.5 IQ points, that what we're seeing is that we can have gains of an average of 7.7 IQ points if people who are pregnant reached optimal fish intake. So we're depressing population-wide neurodevelopmental outcomes with this outdated advice. And this 7.7 points, I was like asking ChatGPT, how can I like make that real? What does that actually mean? And so that's sort of like, you have, the curve, and you have the median at, you're scoring in the 50th percentile, you're moving to the 70th percentile. And I know how I feel when my son comes home for the standardized test, he was at 50 versus 70, how I would feel about it. This is what we're talking about. And the other thing Chat told me was that, even one IQ point gain translates into economic benefits for the person, for society. So 7.7 IQ points it's really off the charts in terms of what this means on a population-wide scale. So this is also not just in this commentary from 2025, this is global consensus. So we have advice ranging from what you see in the dietary guidelines to the National Academies of Sciences, World Health Organization, and FAO, showing that and stating very clearly that fish in pregnancy is linked to improved infant health outcomes, including visual acuity and cognitive health, and shows no evidence of harm. So this is really not fringe science, this is global agreement that we have at this point. So what we need to do, what I urge everyone here in this room and everyone who is listening, is to update the message. And I would say to the folks in education at FDA, we need to update that, but I will let you all know that that branch was eliminated as of April 1st by our current administration. So I'm not even exactly sure who I'm speaking to at FDA who could update this messaging. But when there is a chance to update it and we have our structures back together again, we need to update this message to rely on scientific consensus and not old fears, and to equip pregnant people with confidence that they're making a good choice when they are choosing to eat seafood during pregnancy. So I had actually mocked up a mock infographic that would be like perfect fish advice, but I couldn't quite get it into this final draft. So I'm gonna ask, as a former college professor, I'm gonna ask for some audience participation, if you'll indulge me. So if we're writing this perfect infographic, what will we want to start with? What is the main health benefit that we're talking about here that you would get if moms ate enough seafood during pregnancy?
Smarter children.
Smarter children, so absolutely, that's what should be at the top of the fish advice, okay? Fish during pregnancy supports baby's brain development and decreases risk of preterm birth. Will we want to tell them that their fish intake is okay? Is it too high? Is it too low? Is it just right? Are people eating enough fish during?
Too low.
Tell them fish intake during pregnancy is too low. Second bullet on the perfect infographic. And then how should we be choosing fish? Based on omega-3. So tell them choose omega-3 rich fish like salmon, herring, trout, mackerel. And then finally, if we were ending with like exactly the magnitude of what would happen to IQ, we would tell them, do you guys remember the number? 7, over 7 points. You can boost your baby's IQ by over 7 points by consuming adequate seafood. So this is the advice that I hope gets out there, and I challenge us all to keep telling this story. So we definitely want to build the next generation and feed their full potential, and seafood has an amazing capability to do that. So thank you for allowing me to learn something.